This is Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance in San Luis Obispo today, and we are joined by the assessor of that county. His name is Tom Bordonaro. You know him well. He spent time in the California State Legislature, but he has come home in your fourth term as the assessor.
This is my fourth term, and I love it.
And I know you do. And you have seen the real estate market go through fits and starts like one has never seen. It's been a rocky ride. Give us a sense of the difference from today, 2015, as opposed to when we spoke in 2010, let's say.
Between 15 and 10, the market has returned.
Okay.
It's a nice, what I would call a nice, safe market where it is increasing, but it's not out of control.
And
in the early 2000s, when I first came into office, we were in a market that was just out of control.
Exploding.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Let me ask you about that, because there's no doubt that in San Luis Obispo County and other areas of the state, we saw values drop pretty dramatically. San Luis Obispo, obviously not the worst in terms of value drops when you think about the high desert, for example, or parts of the Central Valley. But in some of those areas, the return is pretty rapid. And while that may be nice and make you feel good inside, if you're the homeowner and seeing values return, does that spook you? Can that spook you?
We have not had what I would call a backlash from the increases.
Okay.
As the market comes back, if you are on a lower assessment, as you know, your increase can be more than 2% a year. Sometimes 10%. Sometimes it could be 15%. It could be much higher than that.
And let's talk about Proposition 8, because that really is critically important for individuals that have dealt with this scenario whereby maybe they bought in 2007, everything was great, halcyon days, and then the value plummeted in 2010, and as a result of Prop 8, they could see their property taxes drop.
Right.
Explain how that works.
The property owner has a right of the lesser of the market value or the Prop 13 value.
Okay.
So if they bought at the height of the market, their Prop 13 value is much higher than what happened when the market started dropping. So we chased that market down. We lowered about 34% of all properties to the tune of about $4.7 billion off the roll during the downturn.
And I understand it's your, meaning as an officer, affirmative obligation to lower the value.
Absolutely.
You need to seek out the information.
Absolutely.
One does not need to request it.
Correct.
But one can if they feel as if maybe they weren't swept up in the decrease or they wanted a larger decrease.
Oh, and sometimes it's hard for us to find the properties.
Right.
Single-family residences we can find. We have tools that will identify those.
Right.
But when you get into larger properties, ag properties, industrial properties, or properties that have two homes on them, or multi-family properties, they're much harder for us to find because we have to do that by hand. So we do rely on property owners saying, hey, take a look here.
Right. So under Prop 13, in a stable or increasing market, the assessor is permitted to increase property tax, or the county, I should say, by up to 2% a year. Is that accurate?
Correct. It's up to 2% based on the CPI.
Even if the value has gone up 10%.
Correct.
But there's a flip side to that.
There's a flip side.
So let's say you got that Prop 8 reassessment and you saw your property tax drop 25%. Could happen.
Could happen.
What happens when that 25% returns, let's say, in a single year?
If it comes back in a single year, they'll see their property taxes jump back up by most likely even more than 25%.
27%?
It could be 27% because it has to be brought back up to where it would have been if the market had never dropped. So we still have to index properties that are undervalued, that are in a Prop 8 position.
So it could even be more than 27%.
So it could be even more than that, depending on how long they were underwater.
Right.
Because we're tracking two numbers. We're tracking the Prop 13 number and we're indexing it every year in accordance with the CPI. And so it could be more than that, 25%, depending on how many years it took.
Is that happening in this county, sir?
Yes, it is. I mean, our Prop 8s, that when we're bringing them back, we still have 25% of the properties that are under their Prop 13 value.
So 9% have already restored.
9% have been restored. And so we have another 25% to go before they're fully restored. So they could definitely, and they will be when the market comes back, most likely increase by more than that 2%.
Do you have the authority, the discretion to work with folks when they're in a scenario that they had their property value drop and then in 1 year it spikes up again?
Well, I don't know your definition of working with folks.
Meaning, do you have the authority, the discretion to slow down that increase, or the law is the law?
Well, the law says you get the lesser of whatever the current market value is, or the Prop 13. So if it comes back up by 25%, we enroll that increase. And people need to be aware. Now, we've gone on a public information campaign. In fact, you helped us on this show. Let people know, show them the graph on how to work. We did a mailing to everybody saying this is how it works. And as a result, we've not seen the appeals that we thought we would when things have come back. People, I think, understand it now.
Okay.
They didn't before the market crashed.
Right.
But we went on a pretty intensive educational effort to make sure so that they weren't filing appeals and having to, because appeals are costly. They're costly on both sides.
Sir, I want to ask you, what happens when there is property loss? As you know, in this county, we had the Cuesta fire recently. In the Victorville area, in San Bernardino County, there were some significant property losses with what was known as the North Fire, the fire we saw on the freeway. What happens in that case?
In that case, we will strip the value of the improvements off of the roll, so long as that building is gone. So let's say the building
improvement is the building.
The improvement is the building, right. So
the land is the land. The improvement
is land. It's still there. It's not going anywhere. So we'll take the value of the improvements off of the roll. That's temporary until it's rebuilt. If it's never rebuilt, it's never put back on.
Okay.
But when it is rebuilt, the old values will be restored. So it's not as if they'll be assessed at a new, for instance, their cabin burns down.
Yeah, okay.
They build a new one, which, the cabin they've had for 40 years, so it's on a very low base.
Right.
They will get that very old low base restored, not the new value.
Oh, really?
Assuming that they don't add square footage.
And if they
if they replicate what they had, they'll get their old base back.
What if they add square footage?
They will get their old base back plus whatever the new footage is, and so they'd end up with a mixed base. So they still would get a benefit because they would get at least a portion of it in the old tax base.
Similar to Prop 8, I wonder, do you, in your official capacity, need to seek out those that have lost their properties, or is this where the property owner really should be in contact?
The property owner should be in contact because most of these, especially in some of these areas that are remote,
you just don't know.
We just don't know, and so it's very difficult for us to to line up where the properties are and where they. Now, if it's a fire that is highly publicized and an easy area for us to identify. Yes, but a phone call to the office is easy to do, and it'll help us get it in the queue.
So we look at the recent property roll, and we see that overall we have about a 4 to 7% increase, depending on the city or unincorporated area of San Luis Obispo. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel good about it. I mean, again, the growth is not out of control. So, and the homeowners are now, seeing some equity coming back into their homes.
Amen.
So when we get to a point, they'll be able to move and sell and move up or whatever because their choices were very few before when they're underwater.
Of course.
So I think it's not a bad thing that values are increasing. It's a good thing.
Indeed.
Because it does mean, again, it's about value.
Right.
And so that does reflect increases in people's the value of their properties.
His name is Tom Bordonaro. He is the assessor for the beautiful county of San Luis Obispo, where we are today. My name is Brad Pomerance, and this is Charter Local Edition.